Welcome into the Atlanta football party. I'm Jarvis Davis. Coming up on today's show, Kirby Smart, he can handle this new world order that we're living in.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Football Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Football Party. I am your host, Tenitra Batiste, and joining me today are Jarvis Davis and Brian Gebhardt. The Atlanta Football Party is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, guys, looks like as one dog leaves, technically, another decides he wants to stay in Athens. Of course, we'll go between the hedges to talk about that later, and we'll also talk about what's next. But first, let's talk a little bit of top takeaways. We know we're just a day away from Winter National Signing Day. And with all the players the Dogs have lost to the transfer portal this season, will signing day be enough, Jarvis, to replenish a somewhat depleted roster for 2024?
You know, one of the things that I feel like this is like, I think people kind of like got to understand, like, this is kind of the world we live in right now. I've kind of affectionately referred to it as the Wild Wild West, when we have so many moving parts. And like, I know I've been racking my brain trying to keep up, like, all right, well, is this guy in the portal, or this guy's going to be ready to go back, or is this guy coming back, or is he going to the draft, or is he going to the portal? Like, is he trying to get $5 million, or is he trying to get $3 million? You know, all of this, it's just so much stuff going on right now. We have to get used to this. And of course, teams are going to try to pick those guys that I hate to call them this, but the throwaways, or the guys who aren't getting that much playing time, because this is what this list consists of, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that we're going to have to get used to this. We're going to have to get used to all this movement, all of these teams trying to, you know, because Kentucky, hey, good for them. They got Brock Vandagriff. He was a big-time prospect for Georgia, and now he's going to get the opportunity to play. So this is what we have to get used to. And then Georgia is on track to still have the number one recruiting class. So I don't like, they're going to be able to get themselves together, I'm sure.
And Brian, how about you? Do you think with tomorrow being National Signing Day, and just kind of look at all the departures, number one, do they have enough in the stable to at least kind of still be close to who they've been the last couple of seasons? And then number two is, will they continue to pick up recruits, to Jarvis's point, to still be number one in the class?
Yeah, I think the answer is I think so, which is like the worst sports media answer possible, right? We should go with a full yes or a full no. But there's so many names, and with this Orange Bowl coming up, that we don't know if they're going to the draft or coming back. Like, I look at just the wide receiver position, right? What's Rosemary Jack Saint doing? What's Ladd McConkey doing? What's Arian Smith doing? What's Dominic Lovick or Ra Thomas? Like, are these guys staying? Are they going? Are they transferring? Or what are they doing? And I think now we're in this game of their decision depends on what happens tomorrow and which guys ultimately sign and don't sign, and what's going to happen with that. I do miss the fact of signing day being such a big deal and such a big thing, because the transfer portal's become this thing. And we've seen it time and time again, even with the, a program like Georgia or another, other big programs, where these 3 and 4 stars and 2 stars and no stars, they're just as important sometimes, because you get those guys in and you develop them. But
true,
it's hard to tell just in the fact of where are all these other guys going? Are they going to come back? Are they going to stay? Now, I do think a lot of them that haven't announced will be coming back to the program. I would say more of them than not. So I think the answer is yes, I'm pretty sure, but not fully yet until we know what happens after the Orange Bowl and who winds up staying and going.
Yeah, and that's actually a good point, because you don't know who's going to stay. They're probably mulling over it and looking to see who comes in that early signing day. But I think the other point is this: all eyes are going to be on what happens in the Orange Bowl, because some players may actually play so that they get one more audition and then kind of determine what the buzz is for them and what the prospects are for them in the draft, and then maybe decide that they actually want to come back for another season with Georgia. So we shall see how it plays out tomorrow. It's going to be interesting, and we'll talk about some more interesting things that keep playing out seemingly minute by minute for this Georgia team. Now, Georgia wins in the transfer portal have been somewhat few and far between. We really haven't heard a lot of big wins for them as of yet. Could change on Wednesday. So, BG, what do you think Kirby Smart can do to, in the meantime, retain players like Javon Bullard and Tate Ratledge if those players don't wait until, say, an Orange Bowl to make a decision.
I think Kirby's going to keep doing what he always does and be full-on salesman in the sense of go look at that draft from last year. Go look at that draft from the year before. If you stay one more year and you do this, like you take a look at a guy like Cedric Van Pran. I mean, he should be the first center or second center taken this year, where last year he was probably a third or fourth round guy.
Exactly.
Coming back, he probably made a little NIL money. I don't know exactly what he may have made or not, but bringing a guy like that back and developing even more. And now he's the guy at center in this draft coming out in that way. So I think it's just, hey, look at this development. The track record's there. You look to this draft class, look at what we've done in the last, you can be another one of these first rounders. You can be one of these dozen guys that go. So I think that's the biggest thing for him. And I also think it's going to be, hey man, we've got unfinished business now. Like we came back, and a lot of these guys that have the chance to leave do have a ring or two rings, but do you really want to go out on that loss to Bama? Don't you want to get Bama back? Don't you want to come and do this again? So, and Kirby's one of the best closers there is in college football. So I think that those two things are what he's going to use in his toolbox there.
And BG, I think you make a great point, because here's the thing. We all understand what the development process is when you get to Georgia, right? Because you may have to wait because there's a 5-star who may be an inch better than you, right? And I love what they were able to do this year at the left guard spot. You got Michael Morris and Dylan Fairchild, those guys rotating, and everybody's saying, oh my God, both of those guys are pretty good. So I think there are some things that, because, you do that, you get those guys those playing time, because if a guy like Tate Ratledge decides to leave, hey, you can just slide Dylan Fairchild right onto their right guard spot. And you even saw him pop over there when Tate Ratledge was out. So it's just the type of job that college coaches, specifically Kirby Smart, have to do, and when it comes in this new world that we're dealing with right now, it is so hard. It is because you can go out there and go pound the recruiting trail, because quarterbacks, coaches have been able to traditionally have done that. But hey, shoot, you got to kind of stick around on your own campus and say, hey, man, stick around.
Right.
Let's do, you need to come on back. Come on back. Let's win another natty. So, what he's been able to do, not only being able to retain the guys that you have on your roster, like a Tate Ratledge, because, if you're not a first round pick, hey, man, just like BG mentioned, Cedric Van Pran is a perfect example. If you're not a first round pick, you might as well come on back, because that guaranteed money is so much different in the early round versus being a third or fourth or fifth round pick. And I think that, that's an easy sell in my eyes. So I think those guys, I think Tate Ratledge is the guy that, if you ask me to choose, I think Tate Ratledge is the guy that'll probably end up coming back for another year. And we understand what Georgia is. The scouts are going to always be there. So, hey, as long as you stay healthy, you're more than likely, you're going to go higher than you would have if you would have left out this year.
Yeah, and that might be one of the sales tools that, hey, look what that guaranteed money can look like. And in the meantime, we'll help you with some NIL deals so that you won't feel like, wow, I still could have, profited somewhat if I'd gone into the draft. So I think that Georgia program is the type of program that can actually do that. And there was, what you said, BG, I actually want to go back to that, because you were talking about the potential for that that receiver room and what's going to happen in that receiver room. And I feel like that might be one of the wins, if you will, whether that's a transfer portal win or tomorrow a recruitment signing day win. I feel like that might be one of the groups where we see a lot of movement. But what are you kind of thinking as far as where Kirby Smart might go in terms of a position group?
Yeah, it looks like London Humphreys is going to come over from Vanderbilt. It's been reported, but not fully, through, and nothing's done until it's done in this world, and anything that we do, for sure. It's interesting because I think there's such a big opportunity at wide receiver, and part of that's with Brock Bowers leaving. I mean, Oscar Delp's a really good player, and obviously that's the tight end position, but you've got Carson Beck coming back. You have this great schedule. Who's going to be that guy that emerges as that person? Even if Alad McConkey comes back, you're going to need somebody else to be that person along with him. Is it going to be a Ra Thomas or Lovett? Do they take that next step and go there? But there's this huge opportunity to have one of the best quarterbacks in the country is coming back, a proven starter, a guy that'll probably be in the Heisman conversation based on his play next year. Do you want to be his go-to receiver? And that's one thing, too, that Kirby still hasn't fully unlocked at Georgia. And Georgia as a program really hasn't fully unlocked. I mean, there's been, AJ Greens and Terrence Edwards and guys like that. But overall, no one ever thinks about Georgia as the wide receiver school. So I think there's a massive opportunity. And the other position, real quick, is for me, running back, which is just weird to say at Georgia. We still don't know what Kendall Milton's going to do or Dejon Edwards. Those decisions are to be determined. Trevor Etienne looks like he may be coming over. And I think that's really important because I don't think Georgia was what they've normally been at running back this year. I think you saw a really good stretch from Milton for about a month, but they need to get back to being that again, especially with losing a guy like Brock Bowers. They need a playmaker to really emerge to make another run at a national title.
Yeah, and someone like a Ra Thomas, it would be good to see him for an entire season because we did see him kind of be hampered for injury. But if you get him 100% for 100% of the season, probably a really good look for Georgia. Now, we're going to go a little deeper between the hedges because, of course, we got some tea to tell you about when we come back. Hey, guys, if you have passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks to exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into an MVP and bring home that win. So don't forget to go to ebaymotors.com. That's how you keep your ride alive. Your ride or die, go to ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, guys, so let's take it deeper with the news of the day. Kind of started, of course, late last evening, and then we got some more news later this morning. Yeah, some more news later this morning. Yeah. Carson Beck is running it back. As you guys have already kind of teased or mentioned in the first segment. Beck announced yesterday that he's returning for his senior season in 2024. Now, Jarvis, this past weekend when Beck announced was that he was going to also play in the Orange Bowl, did that pretty much give away or tip the hand of the fact that he was coming back for his senior year?
Absolutely, because here's the thing. A lot of times when these cats are going to the NFL draft, they don't play in these bowl games anymore, especially when you're a top quarterback prospect. So because we heard Jaden Daniels, he announced that he was going to the NFL, and it's like, oh, I'm not playing in this bowl game. There's no reason for me to do this. I have nothing else to prove. It's time for me to start working out, get my agent, and I'll start doing that and going through that process. So that was definitely like a hint at it. And then he was practicing with the team too. So it's kind of like, all right, you're going to practice with the team and then announce that you're not going to you're not going to play with them in the bowl game and go to the NFL. So it's kind of like, but it's cool that he's coming back. And I think that ultimately, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, if you're not a first round pick, if you don't get that first round grade, like go ahead and get another year in, because especially unless you're a running back, if you're a running back, because the more carries you take, the less money you make in college. And I think that, James Cook is prime example of that, because, he wasn't that good in college. Yeah, he wasn't. He was really good. He just could get the ball because there were so many other people could get in the rocks. They just spread it around so much. So right. I think that, being in that type system, that Carson Beck is in with Mike Bobo at the helm and calling plays and how that offense will look to be clicking, even when they didn't have a running back that you can necessarily depend on. Dejon Edwards came on a little bit earlier in the year. Then Kendall Milton finally got healthy, and he started coming along. So I think all those kind of factors kind of came into play when Carson Beck, you start to see the arm strength. You start to see being able to find his wide receiver and not necessarily focusing on one guy and spread that ball around. So he kind of played his way into being an NFL draft prospect, and I feel like he made the right decision coming back. and saying, you know what, let me raise it up a little bit more because that schedule is going to be rough this year. And if he can if he can get some good performances, against Texas and against Alabama, oh my goodness, you talking about some real money being made.
Exactly. And Brian, I was thinking the same thing. My mind went to the SEC awards, if you will, right? And he ends up, in terms of their All-American team, he ends up second team in the SEC. So most of your media who's been following them day by day, some of your coaches for multiple awards are saying, no offense, but you might not even have shown as the best quarterback in the SEC if you take the totality of the season. So again, you look at him and kind of that Orange Bowl kind of may have tipped the hand. And then of course we got confirmation last night that he'll be running it back for next year.
Yeah, with Beck to what you guys alluded to it, the schedule for next year, I think that's so important for him because as many questions as Carson Beck answered this year, and he's the starter, he's the guy, he's a really good player. He's got a lot more that he could do, right? You lost technically and didn't play great against the best opponent that you played this year away from Athens. There wasn't a lot of big road tests this year. Tennessee wasn't what they were last year, and that game kind of went how it went after that first touchdown was given up. But now you get a chance to put on film what you do at Austin, what you do at Tuscaloosa, what you do at Ole Miss next year. And you get to answer the question of, okay, were you just a product of the system this year and kind of feeding Brock Bowers the ball? Or are you going to develop guys too? Are you going to be the reason that these receivers and these tight ends, that they grow and they're the next step? Because now he's the guy on offense, right?
Yeah.
Like it was Bowers' offense, even though it's so weird that it's a tight end's offense. But now it's his. Now it's fully his reins. It's year 2 in it. And plus, you didn't accomplish what Stetson did those 2 years prior. And that's always going to be looming in your head. So I think there's a lot of things that he can still prove going into next year, even though he still played well this season.
I think you make a great point, BG, because we think about the moments that Stetson Bennett had, right? Whether it be in the national championship game and being able to, make the necessary play or make those big time throws, because Stetson Bennett was known as, hey, he might mess up, in these low level games, but he's gonna come up big for you when the lights are shining the brightest. And I think that Carson Beck has the opportunity to do that with the teams that are on the schedule next year. And I think that says a lot about who Carson Beck is that's from a competitive standpoint, because, I got 2 rings, being on the team, but I want to get one of my own. And I think that, that's the type of players that Kirby Smart is bringing in. And I'm sure Kirby had a really good feeling that he was going to come back anyway.
Indeed. And you mentioned the defining moments. We really haven't seen that defining moment from Carson Beck just yet. And, Stetson Bennett IV had so many defining moments that he walked himself right into the 4th round of the draft last season, when there was a time where, of course, he wasn't even on Georgia's team. And then when he was on that team, he was an afterthought when it comes to an NFL draft. So, 1 year back, and it could make all the difference for Carson Beck. Now, on the flip side, Dylan Raiola flipped from Georgia to Nebraska Monday, made it official after a visit there this weekend. And Raiola, who was the top pocket passing quarterback in the ESPN recruiting class for 2024, made a real nice acceptance video, I guess you'd say, / decommit video for all the world to see. So now, you look at this, for me, and this is my opinion, but he committed to Ohio State early in May 22, only to decommit and choose Georgia in May 23. Now we're in December of 23, and he's choosing Nebraska. Brian, do you think the Dogs dodged a bullet with Dylan seeming to be so uncertain in his comments, or do you think Ohio State to Georgia to Nebraska is just the way it goes down in the world with its transfer portal?
With him, I'm not really sure, because he seems so indecisive, even though he seems like such a good player, and I wish him nothing but the best of luck in that situation. I think ultimately, and he could have gone anywhere, it seems like maybe Nebraska found a little coin, but it also seems like he wants to play too. And once he kind of figured out maybe Beck was the guy, I mean, there's a good chance he's not even the backup next year. I mean, that job's Gunnar Stockton to lose as far as being the backup, with Vandergriff moving on and that. So if he were to step into a situation where, all right, I'm the 3rd string guy and I can go here, or here. And these guys know, and I appreciate the players taking advantage of this type of stuff. It's frustrating from fan base's point sometimes, but like Dylan Raiola can go to Nebraska, and if the first season doesn't go well or he doesn't like it, guess what? He can get up and bounce. He can go to Ohio State. There's no reason to say he won't be Georgia's starting quarterback in 2025. You can go right back to Athens if you want. So it is crazy that it's the Wild West from that standpoint. To answer your question, yeah, I think so, because I think as far as on the commitment level, that's such an important thing for Kirby, and that's something that he's drilled in with this group.
There is a time where he's in a space where he has to be able to do what he needs to do. He made a decision for his family, and to be honest with you, I have no issue with that in today's world.
Yeah, and I think for me, it just kind of bothers me because we're on team number 3, but it's the lay of the land these days. So it's not like we haven't seen it in other players. I think it was just so shocking because we weren't ready to see it or didn't think we were going to see it in him until literally just days before his visit to Nebraska. Now, stick around because we are going to talk what is next up for not just Georgia, but some other players. You don't want to miss that. We'll be back in just a minute. So listen, PG just wasn't thinking that he wanted to talk about this particular thing, maybe just let Jarvis and Tenitra talk about it. And then he changed his mind and he came back to us. So we love it when BG returns to the fold. And so BG, I'll start with you. Returning to Georgia for the 2024 season versus going into the transfer portal, which he could have done, or declaring for the draft, as we talked about, he could have done. Seems like to us, I think we agree that the best move for Carson Beck was to return to Georgia. Georgia gives him the best option for a championship. If you think about the fact that most of the top college teams will be secure at QB next season. But speaking of them being secure at next season, but some of their quarterbacks moving on, you look in that 2024 NFL draft class that everybody thinks is loaded. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, JJ McCarthy. You look at that bunch, and how good is that group such that you would say, hey, Carson Beck, maybe you want to kind of wait a year before you move on.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point with that. And sorry for going Dylan Raiola on everybody. I wasn't enjoying it. I had to bounce for a minute and come back. My bad. So I'm here. So the money bag guy came, and now I'm in the room. But no, and
He's back.
I think that Carson Beck point you make, I think that's maybe what he got back, the feedback with all these other quarterbacks in the first round. Like you're not in that group, I don't think. And he probably got that scout evaluation because those guys always check that thing out. I think that's big for him, and then I think, if he does come back and has a good season and plays well on the road and does all these things and gets back to, because unless something crazy happens next year in this expanded playoff, Georgia's going to be in that 12-team playoff, even with 2 losses on that schedule, say. So he's going to have all this extra film with all these good matchups. That's going to be really good for him. And again, this year, he wasn't put in a lot of those situations. And when he was against Bama, he didn't perform great. So I think if he comes back and plays and takes that next step and does even better, he will be a first-round pick in that following year. And he is probably making that right decision with all these other guys going in the class.
Indeed, JD. And that's one of the things that we didn't talk about in between the hedges, but if the class ends up like we think it will end up, right? Mm-hmm. It's so deep. It's so deep. I mean, these quarterbacks probably could all go in the first round, especially because we have seen a third of the NFL teams this 2023 season go down. And the backup came through, or Jarvis, if not the second backup, in some cases, the third backup was the person that was taking the field. So this also might be an opportunity. They're going to get their opportunity to shine and go in the first round. You could be that guy in the second round or even the first round next year.
Yeah, for sure. And to even bring it home as far as how the NFL is so starved for quarterback talent, like the Minnesota Vikings flew in Josh Dobbs, didn't practice with the team, and played against the Falcons and got a win.
Yeah. Right. 57-year-old Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco played at 57.
Joe Flacco is 65. Got his AARP card in his back pocket out there taking snaps. So it just kind of shows you, like, this is why I feel like this class is probably going to get a little bit too much hype, because we see it every year, y'all. Like, they keep it funky. Every time we see, there are 3 or 4 guys who have first-round talent, and then one of them end up being pretty good, and the rest of them end up being, So I think
I know what.
Right. Yeah. You know what.
Yeah.
So I think that, Carson Beck did make the decision and it was something when we had talked about it before, and I kind of like did some research and everything. And then I saw, how they rank the quarterbacks and everything, how they come out. I think they had Carson Beck ranked either the 4th or 5th rated quarterback in this draft. He would have come out. And I kind of went back and looked at who was the 4th or 5th rated quarterback last year. In previous draft, it was Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker went mid-round. So, you just kind of think about like, all right, if I'm the 4th or 5th guy, and these scouts have watched my tape, but they haven't had a chance to talk to me, and they haven't done individual workouts. So it's only so far you can go when you start that low, right? You can't go from 4 to 1. That's not happening, because we know who Caleb Williams is and Drake May is. So I think that when you look at it from that standpoint of and just kind of be real with yourself and saying, all right, if I'm the 4th or 5th guy, maybe I could jump to 3, and that's still a possibility I may fall into the second round. So I think that those are some of the things that I really feel like that, Carson Beck took into consideration, and it just really gives you a good peek into what this quarterback draft class could look like this year. And you could be sitting at the top of it if a couple games go your way.
Well, we have some players who at least have maybe not those quarterbacks that we mentioned other than Jaden Daniels, but you have some more players out there who have already said, yeah, we're good here. And they've moved on. And Carson Beck, if he has a 2024 season like we think he'll have, he'll be doing the same thing this time next year. So thanks for stopping by the Atlanta Football Party, your home for the best Georgia Bulldogs football talk. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and come back for the Hawks postcast tomorrow night.